Your eyes do not deceive you. This is a Bruins fan in a Peter Forsberg Flyers jersey talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins. It's been a little bit since we've had a video on the channel talking hockey. How many times can I be like, the Bruins lost to Detroit. That sucks. Boston and Montreal are the only two teams to lose to the Red Wings twice. I could have done like a mid-season check-in on my season predictions video, but rather than like half fails, let's just wait until April until we know for sure how badly I screwed up those predictions. And as far as some of the other stuff goes, how often can you talk about, the Leafs are going to be okay? No, they're not. Yes, they are. No, they're not. No, they're not. Okay, they might be. Nope, no, they're not. How many times can you really talk about that as well? And in terms of the All-Star game, unless you go and vlog it, what's the point of talking about it? But we have some stuff to talk about. You know what? Let's bury the lead here a little bit because case in point, how many times, I don't know why this isn't light mode, but that's fine. How many times can I talk about Blue Jackets injuries and how screwed they are? I don't know, because every time it looks like they're screwed, they turn it around. Although Seth Jones is a pretty big injury, so we'll see what happens there. With Darcy Kemper, how many times can I talk about a Yotes goaltender being hurt? Apparently quite a lot. They ended up beating Montreal last night, though. Darnell Nurse resigned. Good deal, good contract, good player. There you go. There's your opinion on that one. Northeastern won the Beanpot for the third year in a row. Which, as you can hear the dog in the background, I'm sure. Hell of a game. Double overtime. Tied it up. BU tied it up with like half a second left. It was fucking insane. Jake Evans scored his first career goal. Can't really make a video talking solely about that. John Marino's hurt, which is very interesting. And then apparently, I was reading about Sami Zayn. So that's cool. Shout out to r/squared circle. Anyway, we get back to this. So you kind of see hey, here's some stuff to talk about. This video has been, less than 2 minutes? It's tough to make individual videos on a lot of those topics. But we can make a video about this. Alex Galchenyuk, Kalen Addison, and a first-round pick that could become a first-round pick next year, but for now it's a first-round pick this year to the Minnesota Wild in exchange for Jason Zucker. Now, the main opinion of this from the get-go, from the majority of people, seemed to be, what a steal for Minnesota. And I have to admit, I strongly disagree. I, at the moment, don't think it's a steal for either side. I think it's a good trade for both sides. And I will tell you why. Starting off with Pittsburgh. Number one, and it does kind of go along with, what's happening here. And yes, I have ad block on. I turn it off. Cap friendly, I promise, when I'm not recording a video, because I'm not going to be advertising any random stuff. But check out Cap Friendly. They're fucking amazing. So with Pittsburgh, yes, again, you don't have a first-round pick. They are very much in the habit of trading their first-round pick. You don't have your second-round pick right now either. Here's the key, right? You got some contracts, mainly Justin Schultz, you're going to have to worry about. Gensel's out, Demoulin's out, Bjorkstad's out. It's a weird time, but the bottom line is, much like with Columbus, where everyone thought injuries were going to cripple the Penguins, they haven't. So you look at this situation here, you bring in Jason Zucker. Now, I get it. Some people aren't sold, right? But at the end of the day, it's someone on a decent enough contract. You have, term with him at this point. He's a 30-goal scorer at one time. I get it. You see 40, 60, 40, 29, and 45 games this season. Bottom line for me, though, compared to who he's been playing with in Minnesota and who he might be playing with in Pittsburgh, no offense to Minnesota, but I don't know. I think it's going to work out. I think he's going to be, we already know pretty much, it's going to be very difficult for him to be a worse fit than Alex Galchenyuk was on that team. And this trade, really you look at it as Zucker for Addison in a first, because Galchenyuk was just kind of a cap tack on, and that kind of shows where he's at right now. But for Pittsburgh, I think you had to do this. You had to do this because right now you're in second place in the Metro, and the bottom line is, Evgeny Malkin's 33, Crosby's 32. Both still, of course, have birthdays coming up. You have them approaching. You can call Crosby in his early 30s still if you want. Malkin, he's going to be turning 34. You can call him mid-30s at that point. Mid-30s, being 34, 35, 36. If you disagree with that, I don't care. But you have to go for it. You have to go for it. You are approaching the end of, if you're not already there, the end of their primes. And that's not to say Sidney Crosby's still not a top 2 or 3 player in the world right now, but Is that decline going to start? In theory, yes, if it hasn't already. You still have to go for it. And the thing is, funny enough, this team is still in a position to go for it, despite what everything looked like, And trust me, I gave Rutherford a bunch of trouble for the Tanev contract. But you look here, and thanks to the emergence of Tristan Jarry and this defense, which on paper doesn't look great. But Chris Letang, 32 years old, again, another reason why you still have to go for it, why you're still in win-now mode for the next couple of years. Justin Schultz, we'll see what happens. You look at Jack Johnson, and you say, oh, God, he hasn't been that bad this year. He hasn't been a detriment to the team. He's been decent. The emergence of John Marino as a legitimate NHL defenseman out of nowhere is a big part of the reason as to why Calen Addison's gone. And then you have Marcus Pettersson, who is tremendous. He is. That contract seems random. He's earned it. So you look at that defense, and yeah, Ricola and Ruido to, offset, if Brian Demoulin's not there. It's not bad, is the point. The goaltending's kind of figured out right now with Jerry. The defense isn't that bad. The forward core's not that bad. Of course, Brian Rust killing it this year is a huge help. Losing Gensel, a move like this, does it hurt you long term? Not really. Not really. Yeah, I get it. It's a deep draft this year. Losing a first round pick, even if it's outside the lottery, isn't ideal. But even then, just because it's a deep draft, especially in that first round, it doesn't mean that who you would get between the pick of 16 and 31 potentially is still going to be ready to jump into your NHL lineup within the next 3 seasons. Doesn't mean that. We've had deep drafts before and had players in the first round not make it or take forever to make it. Some of them still in the minors right now without getting much traction at the NHL level. If you're Pittsburgh, giving up a first rounder sucks, right? But again, is that player going to be ready? You don't know. Calen Addison, is he going to be ready? He turns 20 this year. He's doing well in Lethbridge, in the WHL. Stat-wise, you can look at his points and be like, oh, he's good to go, but then you can have some counteracting information where it's like, okay, a lot of power play time, power play specialist. The WHL doesn't really give out great advanced stats, especially by CHL standards, which are already kind of low to begin with. It's just not a bad deal for Pittsburgh. I'm sorry. I can't view it that way. That first-round pick and Calen Addison, whatever that pick becomes, and with Addison himself, are those players going to be able to help Pittsburgh win before they fall off the cliff? Probably not. Probably not. So, in terms of surrendering your future to stay competitive now, yeah, that's the right move. That's the right move. You're still in second place in the Metro when everyone thought you were going to be garbage. 3 years from now, both those guys, both Addison and the first are NHL caliber players. Crosby's 35, Malkin, Crosby will be going on 36. Obviously his birthday's in August. Malkin's going to be 37. And at that point, if it isn't clear that they're done, who knows? Hell, Gino's contract's up after the next 2 years. Who knows what happens then and there? Maybe he decides he's done, goes back to Russia for a Datsuk-like retirement tour. This is the time, if you're Jim Rutherford, to make these moves. Now, again, you can debate, is that too much for Jason Zucker? And maybe it is. But again, this is not more valuable to Pittsburgh right now than this is. Getting somebody who is not Alex Galchenyuk with his 5 goals in 43 games to, boost that team up. Again, is Zucker the guy? We don't know. We're going to find out. But while that seems like a lot to give up, I'm sorry, it's just not. You have to look at windows and where teams are going. It's a great deal for Minnesota because of where they are and where they're going. It's a great deal for Pittsburgh because of where they are and where they're going. If Calen Addison is ready next year or 2 years from now, sure. But is there any guarantee of that? No. So what use does it have holding on to him? Again, yeah, he's been over... actually, someone said, he's been over a point a game. He actually wasn't over a point a game last year. He's been close to it, though, which is nice. And yeah, he played a little bit for Wilkes-Barre, 2 points in 3 games. That's not much, who's to say what kind of long-term success that has. It makes all the sense in the world for Pittsburgh to leverage that now to try and win while their core is in their early approaching mid-30s. So for Pittsburgh, we'll see if it works out, but I don't view this trade as, oh my God, Jim Rutherford's lost his mind again. I don't view it that way. For Minnesota, again, it makes all the sense in the world because while I predicted them to make the playoffs this year, it's not going to happen. And for Bill Guerin, taking over, obviously you have work to do. I mean, that Zuccarello deal, it wasn't his choice. He's kind of stuck with it. But you're going to continue to see this team retooled, if not completely rebuilt. And yes, it's very difficult to do with Parise and Suter. And I'm sure if you're a Wild fan, it's incredibly disappointing that they're both 35 years old. And the lack of success has been what it is. But yeah, I mean, there's a chance Matt Dumba gets dealt too, apparently, which is insane. Jared Spurgeon's new deal kicks in next year. We're going to continue to see this team kind of torn apart a little bit, I would assume. I don't know if you go full rebuild, but at least a retooling. So with Kalen Addison, you do get somebody who, can add to that depth that you happen to have. Right now, in terms of players on a contract, I mean, Brennan Manel, Frederick Grieve, forever. You can look at that on-roster defense in terms of who's signed. It's not looking great. And if you take a look at their reserve list, I mean, it's there are some names, especially up top, like Matt Boldy, could be decent enough defensively. Philip Johansson was a first-round pick. But yeah, defensively, it's a little bit weak in theory. So big addition to get a former second-round pick who looks like, he will be an NHLer. There's a good shot at it. But again, that serves Minnesota a hell of a lot better right now than it does Pittsburgh. That first-round pick, again, for Minnesota, it's going to be huge. It's going to be outside the lottery unless Pittsburgh collapses. But still, it's big for them to get a first-round pick back as well. Who knows what that pick becomes? I'll talk to you in 10 years when we know for sure whether or not they hit with this pick. Hell, maybe they trade it. The interesting thing, of course, is Alex Galchenyuk, which, again, at this point, you cannot view, if this is NHL 20, you cannot view Alex Galchenyuk as a positive asset with trade value. He's Louis Eriksson. And that's incredibly sad to say. But right now, he's Louis Eriksson. Can he turn it around? Yes. Does part of me hope he does? Yes, because it's been a very bizarre career for him since he was drafted in 2012 by Montreal. But at the end of the day, I mean, you're looking at a player who was capable of 30 goals, 50 points, had 17 points in 43 games in Pittsburgh. And yes, there is now a legitimate chance that if this goes poorly, he could be out of the NHL next year. And that sounds insane, but there is absolutely a legitimate chance that he's out of the NHL this year, kind of like who went number one in his draft year. I'll be very intrigued to see what he does in Minnesota. He has the rest of this season to kind of turn it around. He's certainly not going to be making that kind of money. If he does stick around in the NHL, it's going to be like a 1-year kind of $2 million deal at most, probably show me contract. Or he goes to the KHL to make some decent money and then comes back, or at least attempts to come back later on. But yeah, in terms of viewing him with positive value, you really can't right now. It was more of a cap exchange. In terms of whether or not the deal was still worth it, Galchenyuk for Kessel, that individual deal, it was still probably worth it for Pittsburgh to get rid of Phil Kessel because that relationship just kind of burned. And if you view it trade tree style, it might work out well for Pittsburgh, but now that they have Jason Zucker, it's tough to say for sure. But the most interesting piece of that trade for me is Alex Galchenyuk. What is he going to be able to do? With Minnesota, we don't know yet. Kalen Addison, I mean, really with all these pieces, we don't know yet. But with Kalen Addison, the assumption is, yes, he'll be an NHL defenseman. Maybe he won't be. You can look great in junior. You can get to the AHL and look great. You can get to the NHL and just flatline. We don't know. Time will tell. And again, that first-round pick, we don't know. If Pittsburgh, even if they don't win in the next 3 years or so, as long as they're competitive, the trade makes sense. If Pittsburgh makes the playoffs this year, but then falls off, gets bounced in the first round in dominant fashion again, and then the next 2 years they struggle to make the playoffs and get bounced early again, yeah, it's not going to look good for them. But whether or not they win or lose this trade, it comes down to what Minnesota does with the assets that they acquired. So I'm not a big fan of naming a winner or loser out of the gates. I think it's ridiculous. But if I have to give my honest opinion over, like, oh, who do I think won this trade? I don't know. But nobody lost this trade either. I'm sorry, they didn't. You know, I mean, you can look at, I mean, granted, we've had a lot of minor trades. You know who lost the Fro League trade? The Buffalo Sabres, because they're not making the playoffs and they gave up a draft pick they shouldn't have given up. That's one where I'm comfortable in saying, yeah, probably just should have kept that fourth that you got from Marco Scandella, who just scored his first as a Hab the other night. So, for this deal, time will tell. But right now, I don't think it's fair at all to say that there's an L in either direction. Because like I said, for Minnesota, you get a defensive prospect that you desperately needed. You'll probably get another one with that extra pick. You have 2 first-rounders as it stands and a team that you could continue to sell off pieces from to bring in more assets. Galchenyuk, we'll see what he does through the rest of the year. With Pittsburgh, again, it's about winning right now. And like I said, you see the emergence of John Marino, the Marcus Pettersson for Daniel Sprong trade. Yeah, no, that's looking like it's working out pretty damn well. Pretty damn well, I have to be honest. Let me see if I can find that trade. Yeah, it was 1-for-1. So again, point total-wise, it might not be the most impressive thing in the world, but Pettersson does have 15 points in 52 games in the NHL. Daniel Sprong has 2 points in 8 NHL games and has been in the AHL. So, yeah, right now, no, Pittsburgh's winning that deal. And it's that Pettersson trade combined again with the emergence of John Marino and Jack Johnson not completely sucking ass right now. That's helped this team, you know, and helped Jim Rutherford be able to say, we're adding. And they might not be done, because technically they do have a little bit more space to work with. So, time will tell. Let me know what you think, though. I know some people think I'm completely off base and insane to say that Pittsburgh didn't blow it here, but I don't think they did. Again, time will ultimately tell with how this goes down. So, we shall see. I will talk to you guys later. Let me know, though, in the comments how you feel about everything we discussed, mainly this trade. Drop a like on the video, man, if you haven't already, or woman, you never know. Help me out a little bit, would you? We're overdue for 20K. We're going to get there at some point, and hopefully some point soon. I will see you all later. Have a good one. Take it easy. And, yeah, declaring winners or losers 10 seconds after a trade's done, not a good policy.